Hey everyone, and welcome back to Case Uncovered, where we uncover some of the most compelling and lesser-known true crime cases. I'm your host, Jen Rivera, and this is Missing in the Midwest, a series where I cover missing persons cases in Chicago, Illinois, and surrounding areas across the Midwest to help bring more awareness to these cases. These episodes drop every Tuesday, and the goal is simple: to continue sharing the stories of people who are still missing and whose families are still searching for answers. Today's case takes us to Crest Hill, Illinois, just outside of Joliet, where a 50-year-old woman disappeared after leaving work in June of 2021. Years later, we're still left asking the same question: what happened to Wendy Gessing? It's early June in Crest Hill, Illinois, a suburb tucked just outside of Joliet, about 40 miles southwest of downtown Chicago. And if you're not from this area, it's the kind of place where everything blends together. Crest Hill, Joliet, Romeoville. You can drive just a few minutes in one direction, and suddenly, you're in a different town without even realizing it. The main roads are always moving. Theodore Street cutting through the center of it all. Route 53 not far off. Cars constantly passing through, people heading to work, stopping for food, running errands. It's busy, but in a way that feels normal. Expected, even. And in early June, there's a shift in the air. The kind of weather where the heat hasn't fully settled in yet. Windows are down, people are out a little bit longer. That quiet transition into summer. Inside Pizzas By Marchelloni, that same rhythm carries through. Located right along Theodore Street, surrounded by other businesses and steady traffic throughout the day. It's the kind of place you stop into without even thinking twice. Phones are ringing, orders being called out, employees moving behind the counter, focused on their shift. Everything feels routine. Everything feels predictable. And right in the middle of that day is Wendy Gessing. Nothing about this moment feels unusual. Nothing about it suggests that anything is about to go wrong. But later, this exact place, this exact moment, becomes a starting point of everything. Wendy Gessing was 50 years old. She was a mother. She had a son, Josh, who was in his 20s at the time she disappeared. And that matters, because when a mother goes missing, it doesn't just leave behind a question. It leaves behind a space in someone's life that doesn't get filled. Wendy had built her life right here. She worked at Pizzas By Marchelloni in Crest Hill, a place she had been connected to for years. Not just somewhere she worked, but somewhere she showed up consistently. Somewhere she was known. Somewhere her presence was expected. And that kind of consistency is important, because when someone like that suddenly disappears, it doesn't make sense. Wendy was also open about her personal life. On her Facebook, she shared about her sobriety, about the changes she was making in her life, and about moving forward. And that gives us an important glimpse into where she was at in her life at the time. This wasn't someone disappearing from chaos. This wasn't someone whose life suggested instability or unpredictability. If anything, it showed someone trying to build something better, trying to stay on track, and trying to create stability. She had roots here. She had a routine. She had a job. She had her son. She had a life that was still very much in motion. And that's what makes what happens next so difficult to understand. Now, at some point during her shift that afternoon, Wendy says something to a coworker, something very simple, something that at the time didn't really stand out. She said she's going to give someone a ride, and that she'll be right back. There's no urgency in it, no concern, no reason for anyone to question it. Because that's normal. People step away, they help someone out, they leave for a few minutes, and then they come back. Except this time, Wendy doesn't. Now, this is where the timeline becomes unclear, because there isn't a moment where everything immediately shifts. There isn't an exact point where someone says, this is where something went wrong. There's just time passing, the shift continuing, life moving forward, and Wendy not returning. At first, it doesn't feel urgent because in real life, people run late, plans change, things come up. But as more time passes, that explanation starts to break down because Wendy isn't checking in, she isn't calling, she isn't showing back up, and slowly, that absence becomes something that can't be ignored. At some point, that normal explanation no longer fits because Wendy isn't someone who just disappears. She doesn't just leave work and not come back. She doesn't just walk away from her responsibilities. And that's when things begin to shift from normal to concerning. Wendy is then reported missing, and from that moment on, everything changes because now this isn't just a delay in her returning. This is a disappearance. Law enforcement begins what they always do, with the last confirmed place she was seen, her workplace. They begin building a timeline, trying to understand exactly what happened in those final moments before Wendy left, who she spoke to, what she said. And one detail continues to stand out. She left to give someone a ride, but that person has never been publicly confirmed. At some point after she's reported missing, Wendy's gray Honda CR-V is found parked in Joliet on Buell Avenue. And that becomes one of the first real developments in the case, because now there is a location tied to Wendy after she left work. Now, before we continue with the case, let's talk about personal safety. This past weekend, the weather was finally nice here. We got some 70-degree weather, and I was honestly just excited to get outside for a bit and go for a walk. Moments like that feel simple, they feel normal, like something you don't really have to think twice about. But even in those moments, I'm still very aware of my surroundings. And of course, I brought with me my Safely sidekick. Safely is a personal safety brand that creates tools designed to help you feel more prepared, more aware, and more protected in your everyday life. As a sexual assault survivor, personal safety is something I take very seriously, and it's something I'm always mindful of no matter where I am or what I'm doing. The Safely Sidekick is one of my favorite tools because it's an all-in-one safety device. It includes pepper spray, a loud personal alarm, a built-in flashlight, and even a safety spike that can be used as a glass breaker in an emergency. It's small, it's easy to carry, and it's something I can have on me at all times without it being bulky or inconvenient. If you want to get your own Safely products or your own Safely sidekick, you can visit livesafely.co and use my code JEN for 10% off your order. Thank you to Safely for sponsoring today's episode. Now let's get back to the case. Now that there is an actual location tied to Wendy after she left work, investigators find another piece that surfaces in that location: Wendy's phone. Now it's recovered separately, and it's found near Taylor Road in Romeoville. There are multiple locations connected to Wendy after she disappeared. Now looking at the timeline, Wendy is connected to Crest Hill, where Pizzas By Marchelloni is located, Joliet, where her car is found, Romeoville, where her cell phone is found. All are within close distance, which suggests she was familiar with those areas. Years later, law enforcement confirms they do have a person of interest, someone who had contact with Wendy before she disappeared, someone connected to the area where her vehicle was found. But even with that, there has been no arrest, no charges, and no resolution. Wendy Gessing left work that day expecting to come back. She said she would be right back, and she never returned. Her car was found, her phone was found, but Wendy was not. And the one question that still remains is the one that may hold the answer to everything. Who was she giving a ride to? That question isn't just part of the case, it is the case. Because everything we know about that day leads back to that moment. Wendy didn't leave without saying anything. She didn't disappear without context. She told someone exactly what she was doing. She told them she'd be right back. And somewhere between leaving that restaurant and wherever she was headed, something happened. Something that has never been fully explained. Her car ends up in Joliet. Her phone ends up in Romeoville. 2 separate locations, both within minutes of where she was last seen. Which means whatever happened didn't take her far, but it was enough. Enough to leave a gap in the timeline that still hasn't been filled. Enough to leave behind questions that still don't have answers. And for Wendy's family, that gap isn't just a part of an investigation. It's something they live with. Every day that passes, without knowing what happened, without knowing where she is, without knowing who was with her in those final moments. Because this isn't just about where Wendy went. It's about what happened in the time between. Wendy's case remains open and active, but aside from the supposed person of interest that detectives say they have, there have been no new developments. And cases like this don't just fade away. They stay with the people closest to them, the ones that are still waiting, the ones that are still hoping that someone comes forward. It only takes one person, one detail, and one piece of information that hasn't been shared yet to change everything. Wendy Gessing is more than just a case. She's a mother. She's someone who had a life here in this community, someone who is showing up, working, and trying to move forward. And her family deserves answers. They deserve to know what happened to her. They deserve to have that timeline filled in. And the truth is, someone knows something. If you have any information about the disappearance of Wendy Gessing, please contact the Crest Hill Police Department at 815-741-5111. You can also submit an anonymous tip through Will County Crime Stoppers by calling 1-800-323-6734. Even the smallest detail could make a difference in a case like this. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Case Uncovered's Missing in the Midwest. Cases like Wendy's deserve to be talked about. They deserve attention, and they deserve to be shared, because Wendy's family and so many other families are still waiting for answers. If you want to hear more cases like this each week, make sure you're subscribed to Case Uncovered wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has taken the time to leave a 5-star rating and review. I've been reading them, and they truly mean so much to me. I put a lot into every single episode and into this podcast, and I appreciate you more than you know. And if you've been listening for a while, or even if you're new here, hi if you're new and welcome, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review. It's one of the best ways to help the podcast reach more people and continue sharing these stories. And if you'd like to follow along behind the scenes, connect with me at Jen Rivera Investigates on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you're interested in following along with the work we do behind the podcast, you can follow the Reignited Project. My advocacy doesn't stop here. It's something I'm working on every single day alongside my team to support families of the missing and to make a real impact in our communities. Thank you again for being here and for listening to Wendy's story. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.